Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Portfolio series. If you're new here, this series is all about reviewing cool startups that we at launch have invested in. I'm super excited about today's episode because it's on a product that I've used every day for the past 3.5 years, and that is Superhuman. They've built the fastest email experience out there, and they help their customers get through their inbox twice as fast. What I really love about Superhuman is how they've designed the whole email experience like a game. They make email actually fun. The full story of how we invested in Superhuman is super interesting, and I'll link that episode of This Week in Startups below. Essentially, we had invested in Rahul, the founder's first company, which was called Rapportive, and that was kind of the precursor to creating Superhuman. Rapportive was one of the first Gmail plugins at the time that really kickstarted this whole ecosystem. And they were later acquired by LinkedIn in 2012 for just over $15 million. So the best way to explain Superhuman is just to show you the product. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, so we are over on the computer. Now I'm just gonna open up Superhuman and show you around. Let's go ahead and make this full screen. All right, perfect. So the first thing you notice, it's a super clean, minimalist interface. I happen to be on inbox 0 right now. I'm not always on inbox 0, but I had to clean the inbox before filming this. This is what inbox 0 will look like. You get a beautiful image, almost like a reward. Again, relating back to that like game aspect of reaching inbox 0. But let me show you around first. So the way Superhuman is designed is to use keyboard shortcuts to get you to do your email faster. So Command K will open up Command Center, which is very helpful for basically getting familiar with the hotkeys, and also just if you need to access anything, I can go to, let's say, drafts. And so you'll get the command here, so you'll learn it over time, but you also get the Command Center just to type, whatever you're looking for. Anyways, let's go ahead and compose an email. So here, again, very clean interface. The only thing you see is your compose. You can, in fact, pop it out if you need to refer to other emails, but the whole idea is really it takes up all your screen real estate because you're focused on that. On the right-hand side, this is cool here. So let's go ahead and put in Jason's email. You'll see the name of the person you're emailing. You'll see their email, location, their bio. I think they pulled this from Twitter. And then you'll get a mail section. This is cool. You'll see any previous emails that you might have sent them. So that'll all pop up here. And then again, you get your social profiles and then their last 2 tweets here. A couple features I love in the compose is the send later and remind me features. So here I can type in 4 days at noon, and it's gonna go ahead and schedule that for Thursday. I can also remind me, so this is great for following up. If I need to do that, I can say in 3 weeks as an example, and then I can go ahead and schedule that. And if I go to my inbox, you'll see that it's scheduled right here. And I can obviously edit that if I need to. So another one of my favorite things in Superhuman is snippets. Very, very helpful to save time when you're composing email. A lot of the time we have founders and companies emailing us. We have a set of questions that we'd like to ask them, or we'd like to give them an answer with an update for their application, for example. And so we have all of that in snippets. So if I'm gonna go ahead and do a snippet, let's say compose, I'll use my hotkeys, Command:, and now I get a bunch of my templates easily accessible. And I can go ahead and let's see, and there we have it, the templates here. This is actually a template I use for reaching out to our portfolio founders to see if they want to come on the show. So just makes this process super quick, and obviously I can go in and edit it, but it's just a very quick template. Another one of my favorite features is split inbox. So at the top of my inbox, I've got my main inbox, which is just jammed with email. Then I've got individual micro inboxes, and these are much more clean. Split inbox allows you to do exactly that, split your inbox into multiple different folders essentially, so you can keep track of things that might be more important. So I've got a folder here that says team, and JCal as an example. So any email coming from JCal I want in its own email, so I can kind of get to that quicker. And then also same with the team just to prioritize, how I'm dealing with email. And then I've got a Substack one. This I don't really need to clear out the inbox. It's more so just to keep everything there. And then I've got a Google Docs one, which is cool. Although we don't really use too much Google Docs anymore because we're all on Notion. So to set up a split inbox, all you do is you basically do the search. So I'll do from, let's say, Ashley. Now I'll get all emails from Ashley, and I can hit Command K and do split. So it'll create now a new inbox. All emails from Ashley will go into this folder, and it's going to create that right here for me. And now I've got all of Ashley's emails kind of there for me, easy to access. And again, part of Superhuman is the whole speed aspect. And so as you just saw, that search of me doing Ashley populated very quickly. And that's just how search works. It's insanely fast. I can just do any email from, let's say, Jackie. It just pops up instantly. I haven't seen any other email, software do this. And there's many other features that I'm not touching on. I'm just touching on the ones that, I find valuable to me. There's also other things like calendar. Now you can see your whole calendar populating on the side. It's Sunday, so I have nothing here. But as an example, my whole calendar will be here now. Here's an example, actually. Let's say Jackie, meeting. Can we meet tomorrow at? I just typed tomorrow, and it's going to populate the day. I don't even need to select my calendar. It's just saving me time. Can we meet on Thursday? Again, it's going to populate Thursday, and I can see my availability here. From here, I can create an event. Meeting with Jackie. Go ahead and set this up. And if I need to add more details, add that here, and then save the event. And it's in my calendar. And so things like that, they're constantly iterating on the product. This is something they added in the last year, I think. Game changer for people who need to see their calendar. And the last thing I want to touch on is just how you use Superhuman. So as I mentioned, it's like a game. So you don't need to use the cursor. You can actually, and it makes more sense if you don't use the cursor and just get through your inbox using keyboard shortcuts. So K is up, J is down on the keyboard. This lets me navigate. If I hit enter, I go into an email. If I hit escape, I'm back. And so really I can just flow through my email inbox. E is done. So I'm just going through, and I'm forcing myself, one after the other to get into the email flow. So I'm not, seeing this email, then having to go back, then selecting an email. I'm just one after the other going through the different emails. And, if I need to, let's say, remind me, I'll go ahead and remind me tomorrow. And so that's the whole concept behind Superhuman. It's really just getting through your inbox, getting in a flow state. That's how you get through your inbox faster. I also got the chance to sit down with my friend Gaurav, who's a founding team member and heads up growth at Superhuman. This is a really fun conversation about building delightful products, growing organically and reaching product market fit, and the many other intentional things that Superhuman did to grow. Let's get into it. So Gaurav, thanks so much for joining me on this new episode of the Portfolio series.
I'm super happy to be here.
So let's just get started with a little bit about yourself and what you were doing before Superhuman, and then how you ended up at Superhuman.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Gaurav. I'm the head of growth at Superhuman. My very first job out of college, I actually worked as an intern at a software company called Redgate in Cambridge. And what I got to do there was kind of learn database technology primarily, but I also got to interface with all of the kind of like customer facing teams and help them be more effective, be more productive, while also using technology. And for me, that kind of first internship was like just absolutely eye-opening and mind-blowing, because I got to see firsthand a number of things which I've kind of carried forwards with me in my career. How technology can help people go faster, how businesses really work on the inside, how sort of the money gets made, but also how the product can really delight customers. And I really got to sit at the heart of all of the above. After that, I wanted to gain a little more exposure to the business side of things. Like I wanted to learn about strategy, and I wanted to learn about how decisions got made, how projects could be run, and so on. So I actually spent the next 6 years of my career in consulting, strategy consulting. I got the opportunity to travel all around the globe working with really interesting people on my team and also with clients. One thing that I felt as I was going through that experience was I wanted to get closer and closer and closer to technology and products. I wanted to get back to what I felt and experienced at that very first internship, which is software that helps people be excellent at what they do. And so for about 3 years, what I did was basically pure engineering, stepping back from being client facing and doing a lot of that kind of high flying management consulting stuff and coding, doing a lot of SQL, a lot of JavaScript, HTML, kind of getting trained up as a full stack engineer who could also product manage when it came to building tools and building software for our clients. And I absolutely loved that. I thought this is exactly what I want to do. That then kind of is part of how I got attracted and sort of brought out to Silicon Valley, so to speak, and a little bit of the insight into sort of how I ended up at Superhuman. Around 2014, I decided, okay, look, I'm really enjoying all of this technology stuff and I want to get into Silicon Valley proper. So I actually transferred out from London, which is where I was working, to San Francisco with the consulting firm. And then shortly thereafter, I realized I wanted to actually work in tech. I wanted to be in startups. I was about 5 years into consulting at this point. And through sheer serendipity, Rahul, who is our CEO at Superhuman, and who's also, full disclosure, my brother, turned out to be starting Superhuman. Now, I didn't move out to San Francisco with the expectation of working with Rahul or on Superhuman, in fact. I actually sent him my resume and asked him to take a look, as one does with their sibling. I said, hey, what do you think?
I remember you telling me this story. Yeah, this is super interesting. For your cousin's startup, right?
It was actually.
Yeah.
It was a speculative, application just to say, hey, look, I kind of need a company that's going to deal with my immigration stuff. That's going to be okay with me potentially taking maybe 12 or 18 months to get a visa. And so really that limits the option set down to one, which is a company that I kind of know the people who are running it.
Yeah.
But, I sent it via Rahul and I said, hey, what do you think? And he said, wow, this is really excellent. Like, the things you've been working on are so interesting. And actually, I'm starting this thing called Superhuman. I want to hire you. And I thought he was joking. So I sent him.
Were you following what he was doing with Reportive before or any of that?
Right. And so, yeah, the whole story with Rahul and Reportive, and in fact, that whole founding team is also a huge part of this. Going back to that internship I mentioned, that team actually started in the very same building that I did that internship in.
Oh, wow.
There was an incubator that Redgate had, which had about 10 startups, each of which was between 1 and 4 people. And Redgate kind of was the creator, or I guess created the conditions for Reportive to be a thing. And so I actually knew all the Reportive team. Obviously, there's Rahul, but there was also the other folks as part of that team. And I actually, got to see that firsthand go from nothing to something. And so that was a part of what drew me out to Silicon Valley, was seeing that success, seeing that ability to have such a great impact on people's lives through products and experience. But I didn't know that Rahul was working on anything. So I thought he was taking time out, thinking about what he was going to do next. And it turns out he had an idea, and it was Superhuman. And so we got to talking. I sent him a message. I was like, well, if you're serious, let's chat.
Yeah.
And so he sent me, the materials. We sat down, we looked through his pitch deck, and I thought, this is exactly what I want to do. Right? This is all of the stuff that I'm excited about. It's a vision and a mission that I can really get behind. It's a brand and like an ethos and a sort of an approach that I really believe in. And I think, I have something to add here. Like I've got skills and experience that I really think I can bring to the table. But I'll also learn a lot as well. That's a big part of what I wanted to do, was to be with people from whom I could learn. And who better to learn from than folks who have done it in the past and been successful. Like I mentioned, predictably, there were some immigration hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
Hoops got jumped.
Nice. Just as some backstory, Gaurav played a huge part in me actually working for Launch. We ended up using the same kind of immigration attorney that you used for someone else at Superhuman.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting overlap there.
One thing that's always true about we foreigners is that we pay it forwards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm super happy and glad to have been able to help.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So that was, 5 years ago. Obviously so much happened since then. So like, what were you hired to do at that point? And then now what are you doing?
Yeah, so I was hired to be the growth person, super abstract, pretty much first non-product or technical focused hire. Like everyone else on the team was basically engineering or design. So what I did was I focused on what did we need to do in order to grow. I always came into work each day asking, what do we need to do in order to grow? Early on, that was some pretty broad stuff, right? Like the thing holding us back could have been the product. So I would spend days or even weeks in the code base with the engineers. But the things I was adding weren't features because I don't have that level of technical competence. But what I was adding was all of the stuff that made the product easy to learn, like all of the tooltips, the how-tos, the keyboard shortcut explainer. Those were bits of the product that I actually engineered. And the reason I was working on those was because they were getting in the way of us growing. New customers needed that stuff in order to learn the product, in order to see the value prop. So that was like some very early on stuff. I did things like help on our brand, figure out our pricing and our positioning, and then eventually started taking on board all of our customer facing interaction. So customer onboardings, as well as responding to all of our customer delight emails. Again, these were things that were sort of holding us back. We needed them in order to grow. And so I took that on and helped the company kind of figure out, okay, how do we respond to customer feedback? How do we store customer feedback and use that for product management? Okay, how do we onboard new customers? Because now that's the bottleneck, and now that's the thing that we need to crack. And so it's been a steady progression these last 5 years of what do we need in order to grow, and then spending time to figure the problem out, and then eventually build a team and kind of move on to the next challenge and let the team do even greater and better things than I was able to do. What I do right now, I lead our marketing and our onboarding teams, as well as I'm responsible for analytics and growth product, which is kind of a big mix of things. But I'm also going to have a role change fairly soon, as we've recently hired a head of marketing. So that team is going to transition over. I'm super excited about who we've hired. He joins us as previously the senior vice president of acquisition from Peloton. So
wow. Amazing.
Very cool person to get to work alongside.
Yeah.
And my new role is going to be head of strategy, analytics, and BizOps. So I'll get to actually go back, all the way back to that initial Redgate role of really thinking about all of the business problems, working with every single team, providing world-class analytics, and then helping everyone figure out how do they get their work done through slick and efficient operations. So I'm super stoked about that as my next play, having been head of growth for the last 5 years or so.
On growth, I just wanted to touch, what do you think makes like a good growth hire? Should they be technical?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it really does depend on how growth is defined at your company. There's so many different models for how to define growth. Andrew Chen and Brian Balfour, and amongst others, have written a lot about this, and they have some really great material on how people can think about this. For us, growth ended up being this umbrella term that covered a load of teams, and that teams were sort of born out of and then span out, right? So growth used to be our customer support. Now that's a separate team called customer delight. Growth used to be a lot of our product processes. Now there's like a product team separate. But that's specific to us. I don't know that should make sense for every company. Sometimes growth is more like a facet of marketing or product. You have a growth marketer or a growth PM. Needless to say, though, I think what is true across any sort of flavor or structure of growth, the hires, I think, need to be what I call like T-shaped, or what the industry calls T-shaped, where there's a bar of really deep competence, and then there's kind of a horizontal of many skills that can come together to form a complete whole. And to give you an example of what that might be, for me, I would say my sort of vertical is analytics. It's SQL, it's numbers, it's doing everything from like crunching some information to architecting and designing a whole database. that is the thing I've spent over a decade on, and that's probably going to continue to be my vertical. But along the top, I've spent years at different points in time on things like copy, design, user experience, onboarding, how to attract someone through a compelling brand. So a number of these things, which, I couldn't say I've spent over a decade on these things, but together they can kind of fuse and form kind of a cohesive whole. The reason I think that's important in growth hires is because growth hires tend to be cross-functional, and they're working with marketing and product and the customer-facing teams and engineering. And so you need to have a bit of an understanding of all of these things in order to actually achieve your ultimate outcome, which is to grow the business.
So one thing that Superhuman is kind of like widely known for is the wait list.
Mm-hmm.
And being how many years into the company, into the product did you, I guess it's just in the last year you took out the wait list, is that right?
Yeah, we've sort of steadily kind of let the waitlist fade into the background this last year or so.
Gotcha.
It's still there.
Yeah.
There is still actually.
Oh, there's still. Oh my gosh. That's incredible. So day one, there was a waitlist kind of on the website, and yeah, just what was the kind of intention behind that, and for keeping it obviously for all these years later.
Definitely. So a lot of folks misattribute the waitlist to us wanting to just generate hype and to have this kind of like velvet rope, ooh, what's on the other side effect. That is more of an accidental happy byproduct. The true intent of the waitlist stems from our company core value of create delight, where we will not, and we don't want to, and we will not let a customer have a bad experience. And there's nothing worse than signing up for a product you're really excited for and then realizing it doesn't actually solve your problem. And so the waitlist helps us figure out, given this huge total addressable market, right? Like 3 billion people who use email. What is the serviceable addressable market, right? Who are the folks in that TAM who are serviceable SAM, who we can actually provide a delightful experience for today? So to give you an example of what the waitlist helps us do, it helps us say, hey, look, if you use Office 365, we're not the product for you today. We will be in the future when we've built that, but you don't want to waste your time and money getting on board, getting excited, and then realizing it's not the right thing for you. I mean, we're charging $30 a month. We want it to be worth your time. We want it to be the most delightful thing. So the waitlist helps us basically say, hey, look, now's not the right time. We'll circle back with you when we have the feature that you need. And we've actually got some very detailed kind of capture of data through the survey, which we sort of ask people to fill in, where we know what people are waiting on. And so we can circle back once those features and once those platforms are built and supported. It's figuring out of the hundreds of thousands of people who are on the wait list. Okay, who are the select few who we want to start with to give them a delightful experience, to build the product, find product market fit, and then we can always circle back. And there's a happy accident, which is that it does kind of create a little bit of that hype and a little bit of that excitement.
Yeah. I mean, I still get people asking me for like an invite to Superhuman, which is hilarious.
Well, and another thing that it does is it helps you stay on pace with your customers' feedback. So if your customers are sending you bug reports or feature requests, even though they're SAM, right, their service addressable market, they still have bug reports and they still have features, and it allows you to keep on pace with them, build what they need, and then roll out to the next wave, the next cohort, rather than bringing on board hundreds of thousands of people in the first 6 months and seeing 90,000 of them just churn out because the product wasn't quite where they wanted it to be.
So how big is the team now? And when I first met, you guys were all, I think, just engineers. And maybe you had one non-technical person on the team. So yeah, like what's the breakdown now?
So we're about 60 people, 60. Marketing is around 6. Onboarding is 15 or 16 or so. Customer delight, customer support is 7 or so. Engineering, product design, and analytics is around 20. And people and ops is around 8. So I think that gets us roughly to around 60 or so.
Nice. And obviously the manual onboarding is still part of the company. So how do you think about that at scale? Is it just a matter of hiring more people or changing the process?
Yeah, so that's a super good question. So onboarding is something that we have, we've obviously invested a lot in, and it's really important for what we do because people come to Superhuman with maybe 15, 20 years of email baggage that kind of need to be unlearned and relearned in a new way. There's moments of magic and joy and a human connection that our onboarding specialists are just so good at creating. It's sort of like walking into the Apple store and being greeted by a really highly knowledgeable, friendly, delightful Genius bar member, and then helping you find exactly what you want.
Another thing you mentioned you were excited for was offline mode. So Superhuman works offline. You can actually be on the go, you can be traveling, and you can just open up Superhuman and everything you would expect to be able to do, you can do.
You walk in thinking you want a MacBook and maybe they actually guide you to an iPad because that's actually what you need. It's that same sort of feeling. But similar to Apple, if you also want to just kind of go in and buy the product or even purchase online, there's also that option. So when I think about scaling, I think about scaling the onboarding experience because that is a true part of what we offer, but also creating and scaling new channels and new distribution methods. So that's actually part of what I'm really excited to think about in my next role, which is to think of how do these things kind of grow and scale. But what we have learned is that onboarding can work at scale, and it is possible to sort of have that profitable profitable experience that is, to an extent, a question of growing the team, keeping the quality really high. And yeah, I think looking at Apple is a really good example of how that experience can work for a company that employs many, many people across many stores across the whole world.
Part of growth, marketing was part of your function, but you weren't spending anything for the first, I guess, a majority of the company. And then I got an ad the other day. I was like, oh, it looks like they're starting to spend. So yeah, what's the ad strategy or marketing and how are you thinking about that now?
That's a great question. The marketing strategy overall is, as with many companies, it's like multi-channel, right? So we are not solely investing in just ads or in word of mouth or organic. Right now, actually, our strategy is several prongs. There's kind of paid acquisition, which we use to attract new customers, but also to draw in folks who we may have engaged with in the past and who may have kind of not signed up at the time or forgotten. But there's also a pillar around content and the creation of thought leadership that we want to put out there. We're super excited about that because it very much resonates with who we are and sort of our brand to, I guess, be able to put really interesting content out there into the world that's helpful to others.
I've been getting so many of those emails and they're amazing. Just like, so there's just like so many unique productivity hacks and just like ways of thinking about how to design, your schedule and your calendar and all that. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a whole, maybe even a whole separate business that could be created there.
Yeah.
We have a stream around PR, which is sort of starting to plug into the bigger picture conversation a little bit. How is society affecting people's productivity? How are folks feeling when they go to work these days? Kind of that larger topic and that larger conversation that kind of gets beyond email and it gets beyond our products, but really speaks to more important, bigger topics. So that's kind of another leg of the strategy. And then we've got, of course, what we've always had, which is sort of the viral organic word of mouth. These are just people who use the product and love it and tell other people. So those things are kind of fusing together and they definitely feed each other and help each other kind of go around as part of that flywheel. There's also a couple of other marketing strategy pieces in the works, but I'm gonna have to keep tight-lipped about those for now.
Nice. As a company, you were all based in SF prior to kind of pandemic, and just wanted to know how you've transitioned and, just tips and tricks for managing a remote team.
One thing that was extremely nice about when we had to make the transition last year was, as a company, we already had instituted a very intentional work from home kind of setup where we had some extremely thoughtful, detailed guidance internally on things like preferred communication channels, responsiveness norms, expectations, what it what it means to be productive when working from home. Now, these are things that a lot of companies don't really have, even if they do allow work from home. But we took the time to really invest in that, actually in 2019, before shelter in place was announced.
Yeah.
And so we were pretty much set up and good to go when it came to transitioning to everyone working from home, which I'm very, very grateful for. That I think would have been a really hard transition otherwise.
Well, what sparked that was just like you just saw how things were going and figured that's kind of the future, or?
Yeah, it was that. We ultimately wanted to be able to hire in more marketplaces than just the Bay Area. But we knew we couldn't just go ahead and start hiring randomly everywhere if the company and the culture didn't really support work from home. So we thought, okay, step one, let's get the existing company to be able to support work from home. Let's start with 1 day a week. We then upped that 2 days a week. 2020 came along and that got upped to 365 days a year. So that transition, I think the transition was relatively smooth. I mean, of course, we've had to invest and innovate a lot when it comes to company culture and sort of reinventing how we do certain things. I think one of the biggest tips I'd have, and this is actually credit to Kristen, who's our head of people. She did an amazing job of this, is when we're all working together remotely, you have to put in an extra level of intention with your interactions. You can't rely on those kind of nonverbal subtle cues you get walking around the office of just joking around, saying hi, etc. So one of the things that Kristen likes to do, and I'm a big fan of as well, is just really setting that intention at the start of any meeting, rather than all dialing into the Google Meet or Zoom and just getting going. Taking time to chat, maybe even asking a fun question of the day, allowing there to be space to replace what we otherwise might have had in the corridor and in the office. By making that just a part of your everyday interactions, you kind of really do get to keep a lot more of the those little moments of joy when you get to hang out with your colleagues.
All right, last question. I appreciate you being flexible on the time. Where do you see the company Superhuman in the next 5 to 10 years?
I love this question. When I think 5 to 10 years out, I see Superhuman being a large, well-known brand that is as big and as well recognized kind of globally as something like a Slack or a Dropbox, or maybe even Adobe, or even as far as something like Apple or Tesla, where the company has sort of transcended beyond just, okay, this is the product and here's the thing that does. But the company represents something. It actually represents a feeling. It represents an aspiration. And in our case, it is to help millions and millions of people end their day feeling happier, more productive, and closer to achieving their potential. So in 5-10 years, someone says Superhuman, everyone else should think, wow, that company is doing some really amazing stuff. They've got a whole suite of products and experiences, and those are all great. But what matters is that company's doing good stuff. That's kind of what I see 5 to 10 years from now. I'm super excited to keep building toward that.
Yeah. No, I think you're well on your way. Just anyone who uses the product that I know is obviously delighted and would feel that way. But yeah, Gaurav, thank you so much for taking all this time and sharing more about your story and Superhuman.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been super fun. Really good to catch up.
All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of The Portfolio. Hit the subscribe button, like button below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.